Outside the Box Reviews, we are taking a look at the NECA Alien 3 Ellen Ripley figure, based on our look from the Fiorina 161 Prison. So this is our first non-xenomorph character from Alien 3. I was gonna say from NECA, but I'm having a hard time thinking of any other action figures offhand that were based on that movie. And we get a very, very versatile figure from NECA with this one. We get Ripley in her jacket, and we also get an alternate look for her that's not just a head swap as we usually get, which is pretty darn exciting. This is Ripley's look kind of towards the end of the film. Earlier in the movie, she has kind of a half-sleeve undershirt and then a big bulky jacket on with a Weyland-Yutani logo on it. This jacket's a little thinner and the undershirt is sleeveless. So it's actually an outfit she doesn't spend a whole lot of time in the film, but seeing that it's from the climactic scene and some other theories I have, I can kind of see why NECA went with this one. So let's take a closer look. We get two accessories with Ripley. NECA gave us the torch, I guess this is. It had a little burning wick up here at the top. We have kind of the guard back here. It looks like a cheese grater. Looks really nice. There's a good rusty kind of color to it. We have the handle down there at the bottom, and then we actually have a little piece of real string there that you can use as like a wrist loop or something like that. Now there's not really weapons for most of the characters in Alien 3, so I'm sure picking out accessories is a little on the hard side, but this is a pretty iconic one. The other one is a little bland. It's just a flashlight. Not even a futuristic looking flashlight like we got with Alien. It's probably just an off-the-shelf mag light, but nicely done. Just black plastic with the white lens up here at the front. We do have the switch detailed in and the nice grip on it. A little plain, but it does its job. All right, this is Rumor Control or something. I get a lot of comments with NECA figures about how fragile they are, how prone they are to breaking. My experience is pretty minimal with that. I end up being either lucky or I honestly think I just handle the figures in a way that prevents them from breaking. I usually know when a joint's stuck when to stop trying to move it, but my first Ripley figure from Alien 3 was actually plagued with issues. One may be my fault, the other was a manufacturing defect. On the first Ripley I got, this arm, her bare right arm, had fused plastic up in this area. I might have been able to take an X-Acto blade to it to be able to free the joint, but basically the joint was stuck in there, entombed within the plastic of the arm, and I was a little nervous about trying to remove that piece because it actually seemed pretty rigid. A lot of times with figures like this, there'll be paint that matches like the flesh tone as opposed to the pink of the plastic here, and it will chip off once you start moving the joint. Here it actually seemed like it was plastic that was also painted, and it just would not budge to save its life. So this new version does not have that problem on any of the arms. All the arms move just fine up here at the shoulder. But to explain why I randomly zoomed into Ripley's crotch, well, we're not actually looking at her crotch, the other issue here are her hands, specifically on her jacket arms. Now these actually caused me quite a bit of trouble. The original figure, it was just the left hand, and then on this figure, it's actually both hands were fused or very, very hard to move here at the wrists. It actually posted something about it on Instagram, and somebody even commented that these weren't articulated, but they definitely are. On my original one, what I found was, as I've been trying to move the hand, it seemed to be moving, but kind of rotating back to where it was, which if you've collected action figures long enough, you know that's a sure sign of a tearing joint. The plastic has become too soft. It started rotating as you rotated the hand itself, rotated within the hand joint, and created a gigantic mess. So with this new Ripley, as I already mentioned, I found the same problem with both hands this time. So I took a hairdryer to the hands, heated them up, got them very nice, squishy soft, very pliable, and I started to try to move the hands again. At this point, I found there was still a problem. The plastic underneath had become so malleable, it was once again twisting. Fortunately, because it was hot, it wasn't ripping, but it was very much on the verge of doing major damage. So I decided instead to very, very carefully unpeg the wrist, and it doesn't even really want to go now, so I'm not going to do it for display. But I popped the hand off the figure on both sides, and it does seem that the plastic used for Ripley's forearms, even though it feels fairly solid, I don't think it's as solid as some of the plastic used on previous figures. It looks like what NECA's done here is constructed a ball joint actually at the end of the arm. You can kind of see it in there. The arm ends and just becomes a ball, as opposed to something like the previous Ripley figure we got, where there's actually a hole in both sides of the arm and the hand, and then a peg ball joint that goes in between. So once these hands were removed, once again very carefully not to tear that joint underneath because that was still very much a possibility, I put Ripley herself in the freezer, and that allowed the now semi-molten plastic for her forearms to firm up, become nice and rigid. I left the hands out, let them stay at room temperature, which being in Florida, that kind of makes them still pretty toasty, and then pulled Ripley out of the freezer when she was nice and cold and popped the hands on. And as her temperature was kind of rising, I kept messing with the hands, rotating the joints, moving the ball joint around, just really hoping they wouldn't refuse to the pegs, and it seemed to work. They're moving nice now. And granted, I should have covered this all with articulation, but wanted to say it up front, just in case anybody else runs into the same issue. I wanted to present my solution to the problem. And of course, being Alien 3, we get the classic bald Ripley. This Ripley is using the flesh tone skin, the semi-translucent skin. I think it gives her a nice look, especially for this version. She looks a little different than her previous incarnations, but I think it actually really works. The face sculpt, I want to say, is a little off. I compared it side by side with the movie, and I don't know if it's just the jaw's a little too angular, or the nose is a little too pointy, but something on it just doesn't quite sit right for me. The facial expression also is a little blah. I don't know, maybe it's a good choice given the kind of mood of Alien 3, but it just feels a little too stoic for me. They did add in some kind of blood-stained bruising up here over her left eye, which is really nice. They didn't actually put the cuts on her face, which is a bit of a bummer. They did a pretty good job here with the hair. They've given it good paint texture to bring out the look of it, some lighter browns on top of the darker browns. Moving down the figure, we're just going to cover the jacket first, then we'll move on to what's underneath when we get to that mode of this figure. They did a nice effect here with kind of the layers of the jacket. It is a soft rubber. We kind of have the folded open look here, the brass little buttons here in the front, even down here at the bottom. They gave it a nice quilted pattern on the outside. We have the pocket sculpted in, the elasticy bit down there at the bottom. We also see the same thing around the wrists here. Quilted pattern goes away for most of the arm, but it is some nice sculpted wrinkles. And a little bit of dry brushing, it looks like, to bring out some detail. They did sculpt the jacket to kind of sit flat underneath her armpit so that you can get the arm to go all the way down, which I definitely appreciate. And we do have the hood here in the back kind of folded up. It's all one part with the jacket. You can't pull it up or anything like that, but that's not too big of a deal. I don't think she ever wears it with this jacket. I think she wears the hood on the heavier coat earlier in the film. So if you have the Freddy Krueger figure from Nightmare on Elm Street 1, you might be familiar with this. You could take her arms and you can pop them out right here at the peg. Definitely be careful doing this because I'm sure you probably could mess it up if you were too harsh with it, but they will come out pretty easily. The arms are marked. We have an R there, so you know which side it is, and that is the figure's right, not your right. But also, you don't have to replace the hands, which I didn't even talk about, but the hands do stay with the arms. We do have a nice glove here, a nice glossy black. This hand is sculpted to hold the flashlight and the torch. The other side is more just kind of open, flat palmed, but very nicely detailed as well. And then once the arms are off, the jacket will just slip right off the character. Then we could take her bare arms and we could just pop them right back into the sockets. And they are a nice snug fit. You can even hear that snapping in, which is really nice. The bare arms are fairly plain, not a whole lot of detail going on, but they are very nice looking. It matches the flesh tone for the rest of the figure. And then I should have just waited to cover the hands because I think these are the exact same hands here at the bottom. Tank top itself has some nice layers of green paint on it. The neckline looks really good. They even got some stitches around there. And I've noticed, if you look kind of down like a perv at this figure, there is a bit of a seam there. And I don't know, it doesn't feel like the lower section here is a softer material. Yeah, it looks like I'm groping Ripley, but I kind of have to wonder if that seam is showing us that these are two different pieces and that we could potentially get a chestburster version of this figure, because that would be pretty freaking awesome. But really good wrinkles going down here. The lower shirt kind of extends a little bit over the pants. Similar detail on the back. You get kind of a texturized fabric look on it, which is also nice. Seam across the back there. But we are missing one detail. In the movie, she does have a Weyland-Yutani logo right here at the back of her shirt. So that is missing on this figure, which is a bit of a bummer. I think NECA did a great job with these pants though. We have the string kind of tying her two back pockets together. Once again, a kind of fabric look, a texturization to the plastic. In the front here, similar thing, kind of pull her upper torso up a bit. You can see the strings hanging down, big baggy pockets on the side. You can see the stitching around the pockets continues onto the lower legs. We have all the little wear and tear holes in there, which are accented with a little bit of lighter brown paint to make it look more worn, though there is kind of a wash of that same paint over the whole thing to really bring out the tatteredness of these pants. Really nice detail in here. I really like how they came out. Very wrinkly and very torn up around the lower legs. And we have the cuffs there at the bottom, and then some very nicely sculpted boots. We have some wrinkles up there at the top. All the little eyelets and laces painted in, which to me is always a great little bit of attention to detail. Some nice layers of brown paint on there as well to bring out the wrinkles and creases in the boots. And then we do get a nice tread pattern sculpted at the bottom. There is still copyright info, but actually look pretty good for being action figure feet bottoms. And then we do get two peg holes, which are in a much better position than any of the previous Ripley figures. For articulation, we have a ball joint at the neck. She could look a decent amount up, a little bit down, rotate side to side as well as pivot. I will say this figure has a lot looser joints than the first one I picked up, but they're not super wobbly. Hopefully they won't become super wobbly over time. The arms, I put both on here just for comparison. We have a pin socket joint at the shoulder, so it'll go forward and back, out to the side. Both arms go about the same amount out to the side for that Jesus pose at the end when she falls into the lead. You can also rotate up here at the upper arm. We have a hinge and swivel at the elbow. We could bend in well past 90 degrees with the bare arm, and then we do get a rotation there at the elbow. I would be careful, the joint is pretty tiny in there. With the jacket on, we could bend just slightly under 90 degrees, and we could also rotate. And assuming you don't have issues with your ball joints here, you do get a good range of motion. You could rotate at the wrist. The bare arm kind of has a little bit of up and down. The ball joint's a little hindered because I think it's just smaller in there. On the other hand, I think you get a little more up and down motion and the same rotation. Torso, we have a mid-torso crunch. So you can go forward, back, side to side, as well as pivot. Nice ball joint in there. Ball joint at the waist as well, forward, back. A little bit side to side, hindered kind of because of the shape of this lower torso here. And then we can also pivot side to side. Pin socket legs with the diaper here, the soft rubberized piece around her crotch, so she can move her leg pretty far forward, a decent amount back, out to the side a good amount. You can also rotate up the upper leg. You can bend about 45 degrees at the knee as well as rotate. And then we have a very nice ball joint here at the ankle. And for a size comparison, here's Ripley next to the dog alien. Yeah, I know they were down on the ground for this scene, but it's also the wrong Ripley for this scene anyway. But I think they're in really nice scale with one another. I did not pick up the re-release dog alien or the slight recolor version that's packed in with it. I like this color dog alien. I didn't feel like I needed a second one, especially because there's only one in the film. And then here's Aliens Ripley next to Alien 3 Ripley, and they stand the same height, which is what you would expect. At first I thought this Alien 3 Ripley looked way too tall. Then I realized I think it's just some kind of weird factor of the bald head making her look like she's more stretched out. And I really like this figure. I think NECA did a great job. I really like the posability of it, especially with these bare arms. The fact that you could have her in this falling into the molten lead Christ pose and then bring the arms all the way in and the struggling with the Queen chestburster look, I think is really, really cool. I really hope we do get a variant, or at the very least just a standalone Queen chestburster at some point. And I honestly wouldn't mind a second version of this from the beginning of the film with the heavier jacket, same pants, same lower torso, I believe. And either do a similar gimmick where we have the other shirt and you could swap the arms to have the half sleeves on, or give her two different heads where you have one where she has hair, and definitely gotta include the bloodshot eye in that one, and then a similar head to this, but with that iconic dog alien right in her face expression on there. I do have a few gripes, and I definitely made sure I highlighted the biggest of them up front, just in case somebody doesn't make it through the rest of the video, and hopefully I'll save them the struggle I went through with this figure. But overall, I am going to recommend it. I'm really happy we got it, and even if we don't get another Alien 3 figure, kind of hoping we get an Alien Resurrection Ripley down the line, we can round out the quadrilogy. And yeah, I know, she's coming back for another movie. I hope we get that one too. I hope that movie's good. Make sure you follow me on Instagram, username Outside the Box Reviews. Also check me out on Facebook, link below. And until next time, remember, in space, don't forget to hear you review toys.